What's up, guys, and welcome to another episode of Gamescript. We're looking at the Tampa Bay Buccaneers versus the Kansas City Chiefs. We're playing tonight, Monday Night Football in Arrowhead, and we have two teams actually, that are decimated with injuries this year. Baker Mayfield, though, still threw 50 times last week. What's he going to do tonight? We'll get into it right after this. What's up, guys? Simon Edwards at Pumacom here with Heatseeker Sports, and you're watching Gamescript. We're looking at the Monday Night Football game between the Tampa Bay Buccaneers and the Kansas City Chiefs. We're looking at a total of 45.5 points, with Tampa Bay as 9.5-point dogs in this one. They're playing in Kansas City. We got weather concerns tonight. We're going to have a high likelihood of rain throughout the game, and it's going to be rough weather situations, and that affects Baker Mayfield, a guy who threw the ball 50 times last week despite missing all his top playmakers. Make sure to hit that like button, get us to 30 likes to put out a shorter video later on. Hit the subscribe. I'm looking for 1,200 subscribers. I'm about 100 short of that. Actually, a little less than 100 short of that. And I'm joined by Spread Astaire today. Spread, what's going on, man?
Man, excited to be here and talk to you about this game because we talked about it right before we started. The Chiefs are always tough. Chiefs are a tough team here. And now that the two go-to guys on Tampa Bay that we would have been targeting, right? If we would have thought, preseason, how are we going to be approaching these games? We would have had a lot of Evans and a lot of Godwin captain builds. Those are out the window as well. So we're going to continue to try and find some winners, and definitely a tough game script environment.
It's interesting with Baker Mayfield because we've seen him come from a history of shitty teams, like with the Browns, obviously, the Panthers. He went to Los Angeles when they had no weapons, and then he finally found a home where he actually had some elite weapons and a pass-happy offense in the Tampa Bay Buccaneers. And now he loses those two elite weapons in Chris Godwin and Mike Evans. And he's left with, just kind of a hodgepodge of receivers to throw to, but he still threw 50 times last week, and he's playing against a Kansas City defense that's been really strong against the run this year. They've been really strong in general, but particularly strong against the run. Spread, why don't you break down how you think this game plays out from your betting perspective?
Well, usually I do like the dogs in these primetime games. However, in this game, I think it's going to be too much for Tampa Bay to handle. And, Kansas City's been quiet offensively all season. I don't think they've scored more than 27 points in a game. And I think this is going to be their opportunity to really put up some points and try and get this offense going. When you look at the way that Tampa Bay matches up, now Kansas City is kind of, reverted to an old school team that likes to run the ball, plays really good defense, and they've been a defensive based team. However, tonight, when you look at the Tampa Bay Buccaneers and how good they've been against the run and how poor they've been against the pass, if you and I can see that, Simon, we know for sure that Andy Reid has seen that as well. So it could be a night for Kansas City to look like the Chiefs of old, the Chiefs that won the title the first year, where they were just moving the ball through the air and they barely ran the ball. Could see a return to that tonight. So that's the way I'm looking at it. I think that it will be a Chiefs blowout. Of course, that's what's fun about doing this show. We can build a couple Tampa Bay scripts, in case I'm wrong. However, I like these Chiefs builds. I think the Chiefs could win in a blowout, and that's where I'm really looking forward tonight.
Yeah, just to illustrate what Spread's talking about, listen to some of these games against some elite running backs against the Tampa Bay Buccaneers. Alvin Kamara, 17 DraftKings points. Bijan Robinson, the first time they played, 10 DraftKings points. Saquon Barkley, only 13.6 DraftKings points. The Broncos didn't even register double-digit points against them. Jahmyr Gibbs and David Montgomery, they each had 17 points, but they're, like super elite. Brian Robinson had 17 DraftKings points. So you've seen a lot of decent running backs early in the season, but the past couple weeks, 23 DraftKings points by Bijan Robinson and 28 by Derrick Henry. We're talking about elite running backs that have success, and we're jumping over here to Kareem Hunt, a guy that they pulled off his couch a few weeks ago. He's done well like the last few weeks, but this week in particular, he's an aging running back, and you got to figure that the workload's going to catch up to him eventually. He's been running about 20 times a game. But what do you think? What do you think their spread?
Yeah, I'm actually not worried about the age catching up to him as much as I just don't think this is a good matchup. And when we look at how Kansas City's going to find success, I don't see why they wouldn't just duplicate what other teams have done. Now, we saw Kirk Cousins and the Atlanta Falcons have success through the air in Tampa last week. Kansas City's going to be at home here. So I'll be honest, it's not that I'm worried about Hunt's age. I just think this is a bad matchup, and I will we're going to throw him in some lineups, but he's not someone that I'm targeting.
Right. Yeah, I think we can definitely get a little different in that way, because I would anticipate Hunt to have a decent ownership tonight, like just based on the workload that he's been getting. I'm looking at about 12% in the captain as far as his ownership, and about a little under 50% total. So maybe we get a little bit different when we're building our lineups and leave Hunt out of some of these builds that we're going to do on this show.
Yeah, it's not that I think that he's not a complete fade, because
Right.
In the blowout script that we are writing, we're going to have to account for, even if he's not efficient, they might not care if they're up by more than 2 touchdowns.
Right.
So we're going to have to. I don't think we X him out completely. But with our first build, let's kind of just think that the Chiefs put up a lot of points through the air. And the question that I have for you here is, so Worthy, I'm staying away from captain, not that he's explosive, but he just doesn't get enough targets. Right. He's definitely the stretch the field guy. And, I wouldn't be surprised for him to have a big game, and I want him in my lineups. However, when I'm looking at captains, Simon, 2 players really jump out at me, and that's Travis Kelce and DeAndre Hopkins. Now, we know that DeAndre Hopkins he's played 1 game with Kansas City so far, because the 34-10 loss that you'll see on his game loss, that was as a member of the Tennessee Titans. So he was able to play last week and only had 3 targets. You got to think they're going to bump that up. However, is it going to be enough of a bump to justify putting him in the captain position? Or do we go with the tried and true Travis Kelce, who has seen his target share increase since Rasheed Rice went down?
Yeah, I mean, Hopkins is an interesting one for me tonight. He does really well against zone coverage. He's one of those good route runners, and he's also a contested catch guy. But I think that Hopkins could take advantage of the secondary tonight for sure. He's at 7K, so he's cheap as well. One thing with Hopkins, he started the season off hurt, and that's why you see a lot of these like low target counts early in the season. He did have that 1-7 target game against Tennessee, or I can't remember who he played, because DraftKings doesn't show you accurate stuff there. But he did have 1-7 target game, and then he had 1-6 target game. But other than that, he hasn't really gotten targets. One thing with Kansas City, they're always slow to integrate guys into their offense, and I think that's I don't know if it's a product of the system or what, but especially with rookies, as you see with Worthy struggling to get acclimated. And he's dropping a lot of balls on top of it. So I think they brought in Hopkins, obviously, with all the injuries they've had to their wide receivers. They needed some stability there. And I think Hopkins provides that stability. He's going to give Patrick Mahomes a reliable target. And if we're anticipating them to pass the ball more in this game, then I think that, Hopkins is going to play a decent role in this game. I would anticipate, 5 or 6 targets for Hopkins tonight. What do you think about that spread?
Yeah, I mean, but my question is 5 or 6 going to be enough for that captain to pay off?
Right. Yeah, I don't.
Why don't we start with Kelce?
Yeah, let's start with Kelce.
All right. Then we throw in a little Mahomes. Worthy or Hopkins? If we had to choose one, who would you rather have?
Hopkins.
I kind of like Hopkins at the price.
Yeah. Hopkins.
Okay. So now we're at 19-8. This is the Chiefs' big win script. Chiefs cover the spread in the script. Who do we run it back with, Simon? Is it Baker again? Cade Otton looked great last week. I wouldn't mind having 2 tight ends in here.
Yeah.
Who are we looking to run it back with?
I think Baker, might struggle in the rain. One of those, I don't know if he has small hands or what, but he struggled in the rain in the past. We know that he's going to have a lot of volume. I think I would, maybe rather target Otton because of the way that Kansas City has performed against tight ends. Kansas City has been a sieve for tight ends this season. They're giving up, 16.8 DraftKings points a game to the tight end position. By the way, Kelsey has a good matchup too because Tampa Bay is giving up 14.5 DraftKings points a game to tight ends. So I think I'd run with Otton over Baker and get us a salary discount too, spread.
All right, so we do that build. We start up. We got 11-4 left. So this gives us a couple interesting options. Do we spend up and dumpster dive, or do we kind of go balanced with the remainder of our money? If we go balanced, I think we got to look at a kicker or a defense here. Do you think the Chiefs will be able to get some turnovers to justify them coming in at a $5K price tag? As Simon, we've done a lot of showdown shows.
Yeah.
Is that the highest defensive price tag we've seen?
I've seen them like, I think the highest I've seen is like 5,400. I think the Ravens were like 5,400.
Right. Yeah. But the point remains that that's a lot of money for a defense. And I don't know if we want to take advantage of that tonight. Maybe we go for a kicker, although you mentioned the rain, and that could also prevent some field goal attempts as well. And the other option, of course, is to go with a Worthy or a McMillan or a Raschaad White and then just dumpster dive here for that last spot. What do you think is the better strategy here, this original build we're making?
So I think we want to try, maybe if we're thinking that this is going to be a Chiefs blowout and we're looking at, like a lot of Chiefs passing weapons. So maybe they're running up the score here. I would go with the Chiefs defense because if you're forcing Baker to throw in the rain and he already gets like 2 turnovers a game, I think that's going to open things up, pretty big time for the Chiefs D at home. I wouldn't mind trying them out first just to see where it leads us and then, maybe shuffle around from there.
Yeah, I know we're not supposed to give out the full lineup, but kind of an obvious landing spot with that build. So I'm going to go ahead and submit that one. And let's fire it up again and make another one because, like I said, there's so many different ways we can go with this game. So let's we got that one finished. We'll go ahead and we'll jump in and make a whole different one. All right, so we've explored the Kelsey captain options. What other captains are you looking for tonight, Simon?
Like Kelsey, I think is like one of the. Let me get an idea of his ownership too. Kelsey's captain ownership is going to be about 14%. I think my favorite captains tonight are going to be Kelsey. Like Hunt is going to be like one of my favorite captains, even though like we talked about. I just think that, maybe the Chiefs take on a big enough lead that, like they're going to use him. And especially with the rain on top of it, like I think he's going to get usage no matter what. And he's only at 9,800, which is, that's not too bad.
Well, how about this, Simon? Let's start with the Hunt captain build. And the great thing about this build is you can just switch it with Mahomes.
Sure.
It's about the same amount of money, right?
Yeah.
So, we can build this, and then we can also just swap Mahomes when we're done. We don't even have to do the whole build. So a Hunt / Mahomes captain build. How do we fill this in?
I think we go with Kelsey and Otton to get the volume guys.
Okay.
And then from there, like we're left with 6K per guy. I don't think we necessarily need to go Mahomes, although I think this is going to be the best matchup that he has. Maybe all season. So, it's the best matchup he's going to have all season, but it's in the rain. So that's going to limit some of his upside. But I don't hate going adding Mahomes in here too, if you want to try that.
Yeah, I don't mind that at all.
Okay. So that leaves us with 4K per guy.
So when I'm scrolling down here and I'm looking for some values, there's a guy that I want to ask your thoughts about, and that's Tucker, who basically what they call it, break the slate 2 weeks ago, I believe, with 136 yards and 2 touchdowns. But since then, it's been kind of quiet. Yeah. Todd Bowles has said he's going to ride the hot hand. But at that price tag, are you exploring the option here? Because it seems to me in that price range, his upside exceeds everyone by a mile.
Yeah. So with Sean Tucker, he didn't get any run last week. They rode the hot hand, but they rode it with White and Irving. And the problem is those guys have been doing so well in the passing game. And Mayfield started targeting running backs at a 30% clip last week, without those weapons. So, he was targeting White and he was targeting Irving at a significant rate. And those guys I'd much rather have than Tucker. I think there's better options down here. Because if we're playing, this type of game script where we're looking at, like a potential blowout, I would take, one of these receivers. Like we saw, this is a guy that I'm interested in at 1K. Ryan Miller had a 40% snap share last week, and he got he got targeted on 33% of his routes. And that was 5 targets last week. He had 3 receptions, 19 yards. Wasn't anything great, but he also had a target in week 6 against New Orleans where he had a 39-yard reception. So this is a guy that Baker's been targeting. And, last week against man coverage, Miller got targeted against man coverage, and that is what Kansas City's running at a high clip. So I think that for $1,000, Ryan Miller is a pretty good value, for a situation where we want to put in pricier guys and we're looking for, like someone in the dumpster that we can dump onto the lineup.
Another fun thing about that, if you do a complete Chiefs blow up, Bill, he could be your one run back.
Yeah. Yep.
Right. And you throw him in there for 1,000, and then you have 49K to just load up with Chiefs here. And I'm kind of having fun with that right now.
So if we put him in, we're left with 7,100. That leaves us with Hopkins. So I mean, that puts us right in a good
spot. It's not bad at all, right?
Yeah. Gives us, I mean, basically we have the entire Chiefs offense in here against this decimated defense of the Bucs. And we got Hunt as our captain. Mahomes, he threw it to Kelsey and Hopkins throughout the game. They got a significant lead. Hunt is just finishing the game off, and maybe he gets a couple touchdowns. And then we got Otton, the guy that's going to get the volume on Tampa Bay's side. And then we got Miller, who's our lottery ticket. Basically, we're just hoping for him to, maybe get 5 or so DraftKings points and give us that 5x value. Ideally, he scores a touchdown and we get 10 points out of him. But I don't think 5 points out of $1,000 guy is going to hurt us.
Yeah, I agree with that there. So let's do one more fun one on the Kansas City side before we do the improbable, but not out of the question, Tampa Bay build. So the final one I'd like to explore with you, Simon, I know that we haven't really mentioned him that much, but to be fair, if there's any night for Xavier Worthy to break out again like he did in week 1 where he had 2 touchdowns, I think it would be in this matchup here against this Tampa Bay secondary that's going to be struggling. And then they play the fastest player they've seen all year. So let's throw Worthy in that captain slot and see how this one plays out for us.
Yeah, I like that. I like that too, because we know that I think it's what's his name? They got a rookie corner, Funderburk, on the Chiefs, and he defends mostly right cornerback, So he lines up on the right side of the field. So so he faces basically, that means he faces off against the left wide receiver, right? Spread. Am I getting that right? So Worthy runs 32% of his routes from the left side of the field. So that would put Worthy against Funderburk on 32%, a third of his routes, basically, right? Hopkins runs 48% of his routes on the left side of the field. So both those guys are going to get, a good amount of exposure to this Funderburk guy. And both those guys, Worthy with his speed and Hopkins with his contested catch ability, like both those guys can take advantage of this Funderburk guy on the Tampa Bay defense.
All right, let's throw Hopkins in there as well. And then this might be the fun one to explore the just Chiefs absolutely annihilate them and throw the guy Miller at the bottom for our 1,000 run back, because we have to have at least one Tampa Bay player. Okay. And then you can just fill it out with all the top guys there on the Kansas City side.
Yeah, I mean, we definitely would want Mahomes since we got two guys already. And then, like, who would be your priority guy after that, Spread?
I mean, you can afford both.
Yeah, that's true.
Right?
I mean,
you can grab Kelsey and Hunt.
Yeah.
But in this game, really, for that script to win, it's 38-3 Kansas City, right?
Right. Yeah, something like that. Yeah.
And the defense doesn't go off either. It's all offense.
Right.
A bunch of punts, not a bunch of sacks and turnovers.
Yeah.
So that's a fun one.
This
I
Miller...
just want to make sure people explore that one, because would you be that surprised if this is just Kansas City showout game and Tampa Bay just kind of stumbles, and as much as Baker tries his best, it's just too much to overcome with the lack of weapons. And one thing that we all handicap ourselves as well as handicapping these players. I haven't been handicapping the wide receivers enough. For example, in my Houston pick, on last Thursday, which I'm still really disappointed that I lost, you see how much Nico Collins means to CJ Stroud's success. And since he's been out of the lineup, not that he's played poorly, but hasn't set the league on fire like I know that Texans fans were hoping this year. So this could be the week. But however, now that we've gone through that, let's go ahead. Let's just say Tampa shocks the world tonight. I don't know how shocking it would be, but at least shocks the NFL fans. How would you build? Let's just say Tampa Bay gets the straight up win, right? Gives Kansas City their first loss of the season, and everybody's gasping except for the sports book as they collect all the money. That I wonder how many parlays they have tonight, because I know a bunch of favorites won straight up yesterday. I wonder how many money line favorite parlays are coming down to tonight and at minus 400 on Kansas City. If Baker was to do it here, how do we build this?
So I think we have to put Baker in the captain, because he's going to be the one, the most consistent out of this team, because every other position is too spread out. There's too many wide receivers. There's too many running backs. Otton is he's good. He's the tight end. He would be the other option, I think. But let's for the sake of this lineup, let's go with Baker. And I think that Baker's coming in at a pretty low ownership. He's coming in under 10% in the captain, which I think, given the opportunity he's going to have and his captain ownership, I think it makes a lot of sense to put a sub 10% Baker Mayfield in at the captain there.
All right, so that looks like fun. So we do Baker to start. Wait, hold on. What just happened here? I lost it. I submitted one and I lost it. Where are we? All right, give me back to this showdown.
Sure. I think the next step I would go, though, is Otton. I think Otton's going to be the one who's getting the most consistent target share here. So he would be my go-to guy to plug in with a Baker captain, because I think Otton needs to be successful in order for that Baker captain to work.
Yeah, definitely. I mean, I think Otton's the only thing about Otton tonight, right? Isn't he going to be the highest owned player?
He'll be one of the highest owned, but that doesn't really bother me, just given his matchup against. Let's see. I'm looking at Otton's total ownership. Otton's total ownership is 32%. That is ridiculously cheap for an ownership on a guy like Otton.
Interesting. Okay, I'm surprised about that. All right.
So now, with Otton, now we talked about the injuries to the Tampa Bay side. Kansas City, for their right cornerback position, Najee Johnson is out. They're already missing, who was it? Jalen Watson. So they're already missing two of their top cornerbacks. The right side of the field is going to be vulnerable. And let's look at who is lining up for Tampa Bay on the left side of the field, just to get an idea there. I know they're probably going to shift, things around a lot, but the guy who lines up on the left side of the field the most is Trey Palmer. He's at 43%, followed by Sterling Shepard, but Sterling Shepard's also the slot receiver. So Trey Palmer would be interesting, lining up 43% against that weakened side of the field for the Chiefs. What do you think about that spread?
Yeah, not surprised to see Palmer get so much love here because the price tag does seem low.
Let's see, where's he at? Okay, so he's only 4K. So that gives us another
low, right? For a guy that could potentially get a lot of targets.
Yeah. And then like on top of that spread, Baker's been targeting his running backs at 30% rate. Bucky Irving's been hurt, but he's been playing well. He had 7 targets last week. And what did White do last week? They're about the same price tag. White had
they're about the same amount of targets lately too. It's turned into a true timeshare back there.
Yeah.
And I know that's what Bowles wanted to do earlier in the season. It can be frustrating for us dealing with the fantasy perspective, but boy, if they didn't lose those 2 wide receivers, I think that would have been a huge development for Tampa this season. Unfortunately, due to injuries, they're probably out of contention now.
So the ownership on these guys, Raschaad White is at about 40%. Bucky Irving is under 30%. So I think that questionable tag might be keeping Bucky Irving down, even though he's the more explosive of these guys. And he might be the guy that I would lean towards anyways. Just with the cheaper price tag, he's more explosive. But then the cherry on top is the less ownership. And we're getting a guy who has, like Spread just mentioned, he's got the same opportunity that Raschaad White has gotten recently. Let me take a look at the snap counts on these guys, just to get a better idea here.
I mean, Simon, if you're doing a single bullet, it's a tough decision. But I think what you do in our position where you multi-enter is you just make the same lineup with both.
Yeah, I think so too. Easily. Yeah.
Yeah. We had talked about that earlier with the difference between the Mahomes and the Hunt captain. And I feel it's the same situation here.
Yeah.
Just make one with each.
Yeah. So, I mean, just a snap. If you're doing one lineup, Raschaad White last week, 56% snap share versus 42 for Bucky. So they're pretty much, you can't go wrong either way with these guys. So yeah.
So just for fun, we'll throw Bucky in this one and then we'll keep it moving. So we got 16K left. And this is where my favorite thing in the showdown lineup here. When you get down to these last 2 spots and you're about where we're at, 16K, the real decision is, do we go balanced? Or, do we kind of dumpster dive? I think with 16K left, let's go balanced here.
Yeah, I think
we do need to run it back. So our question is, who do we run it back with? Do we spend 88 for Kelsey or Hopkins? Those are the 2 that I'm looking at.
Yeah, I think I might go with Hopkins, because Hopkins is going to allow us to put in either Kelsey or Worthy in addition to them. And if we're playing these guys are playing, I
guess we didn't need to decide between these 2 on this build,
right?
Huh?
Yeah, exactly. I mean,
Benji right there. Okay.
Yeah.
Fair enough.
Really, at this point, you get to choose between Kelsey and Worthy to add in on top of that. So,
right.
Good
to
spot
me.
there.
To me, if you're single bolting, though, it's Kelsey all day. I mean, Worthy can beat you, and if you're multi-entering, I really think you do need to explore those Worthy captains. But if it comes down to it, and this is our only entry, or you're doing a single entry tournament, I prefer Kelsey over Worthy tonight. I think the target share is going to be too high. And you've talked earlier about Tampa Bay hasn't done well against tight ends. and Kelsey seems to be coming into his own. I mean, Kelsey's really, boy, I mean, he should be hanging out with LeBron and Kevin Durant, because he's really taking this NBA regular season doesn't matter really full force here. And I think that if Rashee Rice didn't go down, he might have had the quietest season of his career and just been poised for that playoff breakout. You know, by necessity, he's gone back into that top role. But he seemed pretty content to have a quiet year with his billionaire girlfriend.
You know, the beauty of this too is if we add Kelsey in there, then we can easily swap out Irving for White still, because there's only $200 difference.
Yeah, I mean this, and I think they priced it this way for a reason.
Yeah,
and it almost feels like they're like, hey, multi-enter, because they gave you so many good options right in the same range where you can build the same lineup and just swap these two players. Like I said, Mahomes or Kareem. You know, you can kind of build that one and then just move those two in or out depending on how you think it's going to go. Same thing with White and Irving. There's no need not to make the same lineup and just, you know, run one of each.
Yeah. And I'll add too, with that Trey Palmer pick, 70% snap share last week, 81% for McMillan, 62% for Shepard. Miller, we mentioned 41% for him, and then 27% for Raheem Jarrett, who's also in play this week. All those guys I would leave in your player pools, especially if you're mass entering, just to get a variety of those pass catchers. We don't know which of these pass catchers is going to go off. And I would say that on both sides too. This is definitely a week where you're going to want to, you know, hit the 20 entries or you know, like 150 entry maxes. So, you know,
my final thoughts about both Palmer and Shepard, Simon.
Yeah.
Last week had to have been rough, right? You just find out the bad news, you're thrust into that position, and now it's all kind of sunk in. We're going for a long time without both guys. I think both those players have the biggest potential to break out this week. With the extra week of practice, I can't imagine anyone would benefit more, you know, from getting those first team reps. Baker's knowing, hey, I got to get you involved, right? Cade Otton's a fine player, but he's no Travis Kelce, right? He's no Mark Andrews, or as a Raiders fan, he's no Brock Bowers. We don't want to base our whole game plan around getting Cade Otton the ball. You got to think that those two are in line for the biggest jump in fantasy production from last week to this week.
Yeah. I really like McMillan. Problem with McMillan is he's got that injury that popped up, his hamstring. I hate seeing the hamstring injuries on these wide receivers, but 7 targets last week, 8 targets the week before that. Like, McMillan is a guy to definitely leave in your player pool too.
Yeah. And so I've already built some, because, you know, I just, you know, spam these entries while we're building them. And so I put McMillan in a couple, but one of the reasons it's hard for me to really tout him on the show is you listen to the film guys, and he is kind of struggling with kind of and you know, Baker's good at this off the script stuff, right? He can't find a hole in the zone the way that Otton does, or Kelsey does, right? Or Hopkins, some of these more experienced players. Not to say that he won't get there, but it feels like he's not going to help you when the play breaks down. And I wouldn't be surprised to see the play break down a lot tonight. Baker running for his life from this quality Kansas City pass rush. And that's where, you know, you'd rather have the Otton or even the running back for the dump off, because McMillan doesn't seem to really be able to do much besides run his route correctly.
Yeah. Yeah. And on top of that, McMillan, he runs 22% of his routes from that left side, where we have that, you know, weakened matchup against the corners. So, I mean, like, if you're looking for a tiebreaker there, like, that might be something that I'd use as a tiebreaker, like on top of, you know, what Spread was mentioning about, you know, like his route running. We know he has the upside. And we know that he has the opportunity, but for him to capitalize on it against this tough defense, you know, he's going to need to do something differently, you know, this week that he hasn't done so far up to this point. So,
all right. Well, Si, I think we got some good different ways to approach this game tonight, and I'll tell you what, Simon, this is a game where we need daily fantasy. Because from just a fan's perspective, it could be a stinker.
Oh God, yeah. Like this is going to be like, this is one of those games, right? And we've seen them recently where it seems like so obvious that like, oh, like, Kansas City's going to come in here and stomp them. But if you go heavy on the Tampa Bay side, you're going to be a lot different than the field. And that's one of these weeks that, make it really interesting. If you load up 4-2 on the Tampa Bay side, you're going to only be competing with 14% of the field if it breaks your way. So you'll keep that in
about
mind,
right though, Simon, because I give Tampa Bay about a 14% chance to win tonight.
Yeah. I mean, and that makes total sense. I mean, it makes total sense. Like, but I will say though, like with Kansas City is undefeated so far. They haven't the big story this week. Kansas City hasn't lost in 13 games, right? They haven't lost in 13 regular season games, right? Or I guess 13 total games if you
13 total. Yeah.
So like if they haven't lost in 13 games, think of how much that's being hammered into Tampa Bay, where they're going to come out here super aggressive. The only thing that I think could work against them, obviously lacking the weapons, is the weather factor and whether Baker can grip the ball in this freaking rain. But like otherwise, I think they come out super aggressive. And that's no different than they've been playing all season. The Kansas City, when they've tried to be aggressive, like they haven't been able to do, like what they used to do. So they've been doing a lot of turnovers and everything. So, Tampa Bay, like this is more their game style, coming out aggressive and slinging it than it is Kansas City. The problem is Kansas City's got that awesome defense. And we got that rain factor. So, I mean, it's going to be an interesting, game regardless, especially if they're able to, the Bucs are able to connect on some of those deep passes, then that'll make the game real interesting. But, for our DraftKings purposes, whether you think Kansas City's going to win or not, Tampa Bay 4-2 builds are going to be, you're going to be competing with a lot less of the field if it breaks your way tonight. So.
All right. Yeah. And my final thought is really, I think the key to whether or not this is a blowout or not is DeAndre Hopkins. And you see Hopkins in that lineup we have on the screen right now. But if Hopkins has a big night, boy, it seems like it's going to be tough for Tampa Bay. If he's still muted, hasn't worked his way into the offense yet. I mean, I heard the Reed playbook is about as complicated as it can get. So maybe it takes him a little while. And maybe Reed says, you know what, we don't need him tonight to be a big deal. Why don't we continue to let him learn? So to me, Hopkins is one of the big keys to this game on whether or not Kansas City covers.
Yeah. And we see it all the time with these veterans that join the Chiefs. Usually takes them a while to integrate into the offense unless they're running backs and they just throw them in off the street like with 20 carries a game. Yeah. But like if you're a pass catcher in this offense, it's really tough to integrate into it. So make sure to hit that like button, get us to 30 likes. I'll put out a shorter video later on. Make sure to subscribe to the channel. Looking for 1,200 subscribers. I'm about 90 short of that or whatever it is. So make sure to hit the subscribe. You're going to want to subscribe anyways because you want to sign up for the alerts for when we're putting out these Gamescript shows or short videos or whatever. And Spread, where can the audience find your work and what kind of stuff are you putting out for? You doing a keg show this tonight for this game?
The content's nonstop for me here, Simon. I'm going to be doing an NFL show, and that'll be at 3 Eastern on Fanspeak Network. Then I'll be doing NFL with Keg and Holden at 4 p.m. Eastern and at 5 p.m. Eastern because there's no rest for the wicked, Simon. I'll be breaking down the huge 15-game NBA slate tonight. So I told you, Simon, I've been up since 5:30 this morning. Did not want to get up that early, but it ended up being, the time change. Talk about outdated laws. I mean, this is up there, with the women's suffrage movement. Let's go ahead and get rid of this. We've known for. I mean, this is absolutely crazy here.
Yeah,
we got to stop this. I'm surprised none of the presidential candidates have just said, I'll abolish daylight savings, and I think they would win in a landslide.
It's so stupid. Yeah.
But yeah, just catch me on Spread Astaire, and there's just content just pouring out of me in these next couple months.
Awesome. Thanks, Spread. I appreciate you joining me. Thanks, guys, for watching, and I will see you later on today.